actually get some content. All right, so we are recording now. Thank you. And let me just do a little preamble. I want to welcome Chef Stephanie Valentine is with us, a private chef in the San Ynez Valley, but has an extensive amount of experience as a chef and a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America and protege sous-chef the late Charlie Trotter, and New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco Bay Area restaurants. So an extensive amount of experience. So thank you very much for joining us today. And we were just talking about food and cooking in COVID and kind of how that has changed things. And one of the things we were just talking about was what cooking is happening in the private sphere, more people cooking at home. And I was wondering what have you seen as a professional chef and how that's changing, what's changing in the private sphere?
Well, I think, one thing that really, again, I thought it was great that people had to cook more at home and pay more attention to what they were eating, what they were cooking. I think some people went off the rails and went all comfort food, and some people decided to, eat a healthier. And then I think, this all happened all at once. And then I think everything kind of evened out. And I think, and at first everyone was super excited about, oh, wow, I'm making new discoveries, finding new cookbooks, finding new recipes. And, so I think that was a good experience for everyone. I think that allowed people to see what they could do, to practice some life skills, to say, oh, you know what, I can do this. Because I think people always say, oh, I can't cook. So being forced to cook, I think, opened some people's eyes, and being forced to be at home, and especially if you had a family, if you have kids, oh my God, then you had to cook for them. And, so I think it was a good experience for everyone. I mean, I hope people made discoveries, and I hope people again learned some lessons from it of, this is what it's like to chop up an onion and to, pick out that basket of strawberries and to, do all the things that you have to do within the kitchen, and to, we had to go to the store with masks on, and, in the first 3 months, afraid for our lives at the store, but
right.
Calm down a little bit. Again, I hope people got some lessons from it and some appreciation for those food products that we're so blessed to have. And for, again, we were talking about being appreciative of the chefs and the dishwashers and the bussers and the servers, but also I think, I hope people got some appreciation for the farmers and the, the fishermen. And I mean, all these people are that one thing that, we were on a lockdown, you need food to survive. I mean, you need, companionship and food and shelter. I mean, those are the things we need. And, there's people that provide them, and everyone kept working, to provide that food for us. That's for sure.
Right. That when it broke down into essential, who are the essential workers? And then once they were identified, we're like, oh, okay. So we really do get to see, who is essential in our society running that. And so much of it was food and healthcare. It's like, how do we keep this body, moving through all of that?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's, I'll always have a job. That's for sure.
Right.
So.
I'm seeing there's a question here from Carrie, and she's wondering if there were any particular food discoveries that you yourself made during that lockdown. Because you were talking about, there were a lot of home cooks that were like, challenging themselves and discovering things. And was there anything that you kind of dug a little deeper and found?
Well, I was challenged. So within the first 3 months of the lockdown, I helped run the St. Mark's Food Kitchen.
Oh, okay.
Wow. St. Mark's and the Senior Center. And so I really, really saw what a lot of the food that was coming into the food kitchen for us to use was the stuff that restaurants would have been using. So there were big packs, the bulk packs of cheese that they couldn't sell to restaurants anymore because they were closed. And, so I actually, a lot of my discoveries were made through like, wow, this is really where those food systems, which was really fascinating to me, how I just got to delve a little bit deeper into how that food system works and how the food, when we do work with a food bank or those within a, soup kitchen atmosphere, what happens within that atmosphere. We literally made 18,000 meals in 3 months that went in the community. And so we had a whole team of people delivering and cooking and cleaning, and the farmers were donating what they couldn't sell to the restaurants. And then, it was like a big giant mystery box of what we were going to make today. Because we had this big semi-refrigerator.
Oh my God.
Here's extra food. Now what do we do with it? And having to, really think on our feet. Okay, we want to use all this food that we're getting in, and then, serve it to people who need it. And so there was just this whole little puzzle that happened in putting everything together within that space. But really, so that big discovery was just getting a little more like knowledge about how our food system works, within this country on a different level that I hadn't really had understanding of before. So I was grateful to be able to get that, because I think it's important that we pay attention to where our food comes from and who's farming it. And slaughter. I mean, then the meat packing plants close down. So then, everyone's like, again, those essential workers are that, that's a part of the puzzle that we go to the store and buy it. And,
we're not looking
at things that happen before the food gets to the store. There's
a few steps before that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just being, just having that awareness and, that paying attention, I think, is something that happened for me and on a different level. And I hope, that that's something that everyone got a little bit of, maybe not to the extent I did.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. There's a couple more questions. There's a follow-up from Carrie, and then from Naisha. We'll start with Naisha. What is your favorite food? She would like to know.
Well, I have a lot of favorite foods. Sometimes it depends, but I mean, who doesn't? I love pizza. I grew up with my aunt making homemade pizza, and I still to this day make, pretty much her same recipe when I make pizza.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, my kids are like, "Oh, we want pizza from the restaurant." But pizza. And my aunt was Lebanese, so I also grew up with her making dolmas, grape leaves.
Oh yeah.
Which this was in Phoenix, and we would go pick grape leaves. And here I live in, every time during the season when there's fresh grape leaves, I go and just pick the leaves, not the grapes, and still to this day make, dolmas the same way.
That's beautiful.
So those recipes are food from my childhood, but they're, again, super healthy. If you make pizza at home, it's super healthy. And, and I like ice cream a lot. And, I do. I have a lot of favorite food. Sometimes it's just whatever I'm eating. I'm like, oh my God, this is my thing right now.
Happening.
Yeah. So
well,
someone else cooked it for me.
Oh, that's always nice. And if they do the dishes too.
Yeah.
I actually was wondering, like, in terms of favorite foods, I was like, is there a food that you love to eat but you would never cook for like a client or for a restaurant, like to put on a menu? Is there something that you love but you don't, it just wouldn't work for anybody else?
Well, I mean, if I get home from work and it's late, or and I didn't eat at work, because a lot of times chefs actually don't eat at work, or you're too busy and then you want to clean up and go. And so I often make just these crazy scrambles with vegetables. Sometimes I'll throw corn tortillas in the scramble and fry them first, and then throw in the eggs and the vegetables and make just a big saute and put like a ton of Tabasco on it, which I couldn't handle the amount of Tabasco I put on it, but as far as I mean, and even that, I would actually, if I was serving a breakfast, I would make a version of that. I would just garnish it.
Just dress it up a little bit.
Yeah, and then you can, you know.
Well, you could call it chilaquiles.
It is, yeah, it's like kind of a sort of a vegetarian version of chilaquiles. Whatever sauces I have in the fridge go in, and more yogurt goes on top.
Are you vegetarian?
No, I have
Oh,
been.
okay.
I was vegan for about 5 years.
Oh, wow. I was
when I was the
curious how
chef
that.
at the raw food restaurant, so I was a raw food vegan.
Wow.
So I didn't eat anything cooked.
So and that fit, I mean, you were able to do that with where you were working, because I was wondering if you were a vegetarian, how would that work? Like, do you know chefs that might be vegetarian or vegan, but have to cook to the market and not cook meat?
And not where they've been the chef of the restaurant, but I've had cooks work for me who were vegetarian or vegan, in a regular restaurant. And now, but this was years ago, and in the 90s. Now, if you're vegetarian or vegan, it's very easy to find that good restaurant to work at. So it doesn't even have to happen anymore, because why it would happen is you want to learn how to cook. You're also vegetarian or vegan. There were no good vegetarian or vegan restaurants to learn at, so they'd say, but I want to learn how to cook this way. At the raw food restaurant, most of my staff was not vegetarian.
Oh.
Which, in fact, most of them, 90% of the staff was not in the kitchen, was not vegetarian. They were just good cooks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they appreciated what we were doing because it was different. It was kind of cutting edge at the time, what we were doing. And from that standpoint, I mean, I became a better cook, not cooking food for 5 years. Had to pay attention to the raw ingredient.
Right. Wow.
Really, I had to have this great raw ingredients. So, I really, my cooking became better because I just became a little bit more finely tuned with the product I was working with. I mean, like any, whether you're a painter or a woodworker, the more in tune you are with that medium you're working with.
Right.
You are, so.
Well, and it sounds like an interesting, kind of a parallel to what you were saying about working at the food bank. It's like you were forced to be, with the raw food, it was like, what are these ingredients and how do I do this? And then with the food bank, it's like, okay, here's this new set of ingredients, and what does it mean? And you're like, okay, mindful of that one thing. So it's like these continuing evolutions of your process.
No, it is. It's that's why I like cooking so much, because it's always, I think anyone within any profession finds those things that we love, and then find that learning and that space to grow within our, medium and how we do things.
Where would you like to challenge yourself next, do you think, with food?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, I actually love what I do now. I mean, I always like to be able to travel which is another way of sort of learning new things and getting into a different culture. I've written a few cookbooks, so that's another challenge. That's a lot of work. I could always write, I've been thinking, should I, write another book or, do something else, because there's always those things that you kind of want to pick up and learn. I'm hoping to be involved with the community kitchen at St. Mark's, which was our community. They've just finished their rebuild of their kitchen, and now, they're sort of in the ground stages of developing that vision for what that kitchen can do for the community. So I'm hoping to have, that actually as a new challenge to sort of get that, sort of help develop that vision and, see what it can really do for the community. It's not just, in the beginning of the pandemic, I was talking, that's where we cooked. We just used that as our soup kitchen. And now it went under a renovation so that it can truly be a community kitchen. It's a space for the community to use. And how that happens is something that it's going to grow and evolve. And so I'm hoping to be a part of that.
So when you say the community would use, so it wouldn't just be there's the people cooking and handing the food out, but if the people of the community come in and get to use the kitchen
Yeah.
themselves. Oh, in
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a learning capacity, like in terms of lessons, or it just here's a resource that they can use to cook their food.
Well, either of those things, it's not even necessarily completely defined yet, but say someone says, oh, I want to start a business making these cookies, right? That, I mean, I have some cookies that I love. Maybe I want to start it as a business. So now that's a certified kitchen.
Wow.
Possibly use. So that's a space that I could use. I mean, they've always allowed caterers and you know, St. Mark's, and I think the Presbyterian Church too, both have always been very generous with having community members come in and use their kitchen. But this is now a certified kitchen, so that if someone uses it, it's actually a legal kitchen to use where they can sell the product if they make something.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I didn't know that was.
It might be that, oh, you know what, this is a charity event that needs to happen, you know, so that it can be used for things like that as well. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities for it. So.
Yeah, that's a great resource. I didn't know that was going in, and that's great to know about. And you know, it actually ties nicely into like the library for us to know that that's going in, because it sounds like a similar resource.
Right.
We're kind of almost in the same business in a way of like, look, someone needs a thing, and our job is to get them that thing. Let's see how we can. Let's see how we can help. And usually when somebody comes in, this is, because I'm new to the library, and I was only there for a couple months before the pandemic hit. So I was just kind of getting my feet under me in the normal process, and then everything changed. But one of the things that I learned is basically when somebody comes in, you try to help them until they cry uncle. Like, you're just going to like, oh, what do you need? Let me do this. I'm going to do this for you. Hey, how do we find this other resource? And you just like keep doing it until they're like, okay, stop. You just have to stop now. I got everything I need. It sounds kind of similar to the kitchen project, where it's like, you know, here, oh, you can do this. How about this? You can try this. Different resources for you.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, we could do this. Yeah, right. It is. It's, you know, so there's a lot of ways for it to grow. So that might be, you know, again, as a challenge and something new to take on, you know, just kind of, help them get it off their feet.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm gonna quickly plug. I'm gonna share my screen. All right. Oh, all right. I want to share my screen, and I'm going to share this. And this is just our library page. Hopefully, it's going to come. All right. Oh, I guess it's not working. Okay. Well, I will say that your book is in our library, your cookbook. And I will look up California Cooking and Southern Style, 100 Great Recipes. So that is in our library. So if anybody wants to come in, definitely come in and get that book, and you can check it out and then learn of these recipes. So that's in our system. So I just want to plug that so that people knew that it's there.
I'll bring in my other cookbook.
Oh, yep. If you
give a copy of my other cookbook to the library.
Love to have it. Yeah, absolutely.
You can have both of them.
Perfect. That would be great. And so what's that experience like? What's it like? Because, you know, again, it's easy for us. We pick up a cookbook and we flip open, or like we read a recipe, and then we think, you know, it's very usually like a page long, and then we're like, okay, we go and try and cook it. But there's got to be a ton that's happening that we don't even get to see.
It's a process. So, I mean, first it's like, okay, I make these things. I cook things. And then I don't normally write what I cook down. So I actually, you know, so the whole process of the two books, I mean, it actually required a lot of discipline. So I had to, okay, I cooked this thing, and now I would write it down, kind of what I thought I had cooked, so from memory. And then you go back and you test it. Okay, did it work? And then you say, okay, make adjustments as you go along. And so it was a lot of, handwriting and writing. And then that's just the tiny bit of it, because then it has to go into the computer, and then it has to go through editing, and then it has to come back to you, and you have to, proofread it. And, but it was a long, it was a long process. First, and then you say, oh, I have these things that I love, but then you go to put them in the book and you think, oh, okay, well, this is a whole, so I actually need to create a recipe for this because this is something I want. So maybe it wasn't something that I cooked normally, but that I wanted to be represented in the book. So then go and create a recipe. And, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of typing, especially for, like chefs who are used to just cooking. But the one thing, and I'll plug this about both my books, is that I'm a professional chef, but I'm working in a home kitchen. So from that standpoint, you almost get the best of both worlds within the cookbook. Wow. Because when I look at chefs, when you look at the chef's cookbook, these, celebrity chefs or whoever, what happens, or even if it's from a kitchen, is when you get that final dish, it might have come from 3 different stations. So 3 different cooks might have actually contributed to the final recipe. So sometimes the recipes show up as a little bit disjointed, or they tell you to do sort of a lot of steps that in a home kitchen you would never do. So all of these recipes are created in that home kitchen in the way that you would, I have a nice home kitchen, but in the way that you would cook them. What do you do at home? And that's how these recipes work, and they're for the home cook. So they don't use any crazy pieces of equipment that you wouldn't have in a home kitchen or that you wouldn't normally use.
That's great. And to know that it's that accessible is nice, because sometimes these cookbooks, they do just seem more like coffee table books, like they're just picture books where it's this aspirational, like amazing stuff, but it's like it's not accessible. So what you're talking about,
beautiful pictures with ingredients that you can't possibly get. This, especially California cooking, it was really important to my co-author that you could get everything at the Piggly Wiggly in Tarboro, North Carolina.
Oh wow! So it's
right.
So it's
anyone can pick it up.
It's national,
And and again, they're made, it's in a home kitchen, so it's it's sort of broken down how you would make it at home without excessive steps, and because I know everyone wants to eat good food, but also wants to not spend 5 hours, making it.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've found that if we're trying a recipe, because we cook a lot, and when we can, and Amy does a lot of the sweet, she does a lot of baking and stuff like that, and I do more of the savory, but we trade off, and there are recipes, and we're like, man, I used every bowl in the kitchen, and we have a lot of bowls, and the sink is just stacked with bowls. We're like, how did we use every bowl in the kitchen? Why there's got to be an easier way. So it sounds like, thank you that you probably made an easier way. I appreciate that.
Still, you do have to, when you're cooking stuff, you do have to.
I'm not against, doing the dishes or making dirty plates, but sometimes it's excessive, and you're like, wait, this can't be right.
Especially when it tells you to do one thing over here, and then do this other thing over here. But if you can, bring it all together and make it a little more cohesive,
For me, the most terrifying phrase in any recipe is working quickly. Whenever it says working quickly in the recipe, and I'm like, I immediately start panicking. Like I know I'm going to mess it up. If I don't go fast enough, this whole recipe is going to completely collapse on me.
Right.
So
I don't know if I've ever seen that. I'm going to add that into my next cookbook.
Well, you'll give me a panic attack. Yeah.
But what is that? Is that like quicker than you normally work, or is it because you're normally slow? You're working slow.
I know. I don't know. I think it's just to like really put the fire under you. So you're like, you got to be really scared of this next step where you're going to be holding something.
if you're making a pie dough, you know, you don't want to be as slow because then the butter will get too soft, and you know, so
Right.
some validity, but it is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's scary. Speaking of home cooks and a home cook space, and this ties into what we were saying, where a lot of people are doing more cooking at home, obviously because of COVID, because of your professional experience. If someone, you know, we look at these catalogs or online, there's this array of every implement that you need. Where would, if someone's like, oh, I'm setting up my kitchen, you know, like maybe it's someone just out of college or something, or someone who's just like getting into cooking on a more serious level, where would you have them spend their money? What's the thing that you would say is worth putting the money into, whereas there might be some, you know, single use gadgets that aren't quite as valuable in a, you know, holistic kitchen?
Yeah. Williams and Sonoma is very expensive. And so I always loved going to Sur La Table, which I think has closed over this past year, maybe before.
Oh, did it?
But the fact is, anything that you get at Williams and Sonoma, any of their, you know, pans or, you know, so the saute pans to baking pans are going to last for your lifetime, most likely. You know, so it is a good investment. An online source that I use that I really love is JB Prince, which that's for gadgets. That's if you really love it. You know, they'll have everything under the sun, but they always do have really high quality items. And that's jbprince.com. But just, you know, for, you know, Williams and Sonoma, I think has some of the highest quality stuff that you can just buy at home. Made In is a company that's maybe a couple years old that has super high quality iron pans, like these French iron pans that chefs love to use.
Oh yeah. Well, that maybe it's something like that. Like, is there like a specific type of pan or a specific type of knife that, you know, I'm just thinking of like the basics that you would say, oh, if you're going to put the money into like a really high quality pan from one of these sources, what type of pan, or, you know, is like the one that might get the most use, do you think?
Well, I think people like, you know, what do you kind of think, oh, what do I cook? Do I make, you know, but whatever it is, buy that high quality pan. I mean, I think it's great to have a saute pan, a straight sided frying pan, 2 different sizes of saute pans. But, you know, like the all clad Cuisinart, these sort of expensive brands are going to last you a lifetime. I mean, I have had my pots and pans for probably 30 years and I use them a lot. You know, so, I mean, you know, so they do, it's a good investment. You know, these cast iron skillet is a great, you know, item to have on hand. You can cook almost anything in it. You know, and I don't think people need all these fancy gadgets. I mean, I have a peeler, French knives I love. I like Japanese knives, but they take a little more care. So German steel, I think, is some of the best, you know, which is, what's that one brand? There's a couple different brands of German steel that I think are great. She has a little pizza on her head.
Naisha has pizza on her head.
You know, and good blender. I love, you know, a good blender, I think is
oh yeah,
important for any kitchen, but you know, good cuisine, you know, a food processor.
Yeah.
But you cannot, you know, you don't have to stress about it. And you can buy, you know, that's the thing with, if you buy good pieces, you can just get one thing at a time and build, especially at college, you're like, oh, I don't have any money. I can't spend $200 on a pot. Well,
right.
You know, then, you know, who has good, decent, sometimes you can find decent stuff. I've gotten a cutting board at, is it Ross?
Oh yeah.
Ross store has a decent little kitchen stuff sometimes that's very well priced. So that's actually a decent spot to.
That'd be a good resource.
Especially if you're on a college student budget, and then if you just got out of college and you want to cook.
Yeah.
You don't want to spend $1,000 stocking your kitchen just yet.
Right. Thank you. You touched a little bit on, and when you were talking about the cookbooks, the kind of the celebrity chef, and I was wondering how you, because that's such a huge market now. You know, it's obviously with the Food Network, and then it's branched off into like reality TV on the major networks with like the competitions and stuff. So, do you have any thoughts on like celebrity chef culture and what that means?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, for one thing, you know, it's actually, I think what maybe Wolfgang Puck was one of the first celebrity chefs in the country. If you know, at the time we didn't call it that, I don't think, but
Right.
you know, it's been a boon, I think, for restaurants and for dining, and you know, for getting people to pay attention to what they eat. You know, sometimes there are some people who are maybe billed as a celebrity chef, but they're not really chefs. They're maybe good cooks, and so you have that little, you know, a difference sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
I've actually never seen a cooking show, just because I don't watch them. Because I don't have. I lived it for a long time. You know, the restaurant. But oh my God, look at Nisha's little hat.
Yeah, Nisha's got a little chef's hat on now.
Yeah,
Now
so
Nisha is the celebrity chef.
she is being the celebrity chef with her little hat on. But you know, it's I think that, you know, again, the more exposure people get, I don't think there's a lot of shows, just like within any genre of show, that are bad, and then the few that are good, probably an 80-20 rule, 80% bad, 20%, you know, that are good. But if it's something that you like, that you're interested in, then, you know, it's fun to watch. And
Yeah. It's funny that you've never watched one, and it's not like, you know, you should. You know, absolutely stay away if you don't want to, because they're everywhere, and right, we will get sucked into them and watch them, and they range from the absurd to what feels practical. You know, there's this huge spectrum of cooking, and so I'm kind of glad that you haven't seen it, because
I know,
I
and
don't know
everyone,
what you would want to.
the British baking show, everyone loves that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, love that. And I can see that because their, you know, sort of brand of humor is kind of funny, and they're very particular about their stuff. And but yeah, I just never can sit and watch one. It just seems.
Yeah. No, if it's too close, then
yeah.
I'm gonna say if I had any other. Well, where, you know, we've talked a little bit about like what people are getting more mindful about their own food and the supply chain and stuff like that. And I'm curious where you would like to see food and cooking going, like where you would like to see that progress, kind of social, on maybe a social level, and then also maybe on a culinary, yeah, culinary level of like, you know, what kind of food would you like to see being made, but also on the social side, what kind of how people interact with it too. I guess it's a two-part question.
Yeah. You know, that's I mean, that actually that's sort of a big important question. Where do we go? How do we feed ourselves without having as much impact on the planet? So I think, you know, I hope that you know, eating real food, unprocessed food that doesn't require a lot of packaging, I think is really important. I think we're starting to realize, okay, look at all this packaging we have, not just with our food, but with everything. But in food in particular comes very, you know, in stuff, you know, every time you buy something that has that next level of processing with it, there's that next level of you're not just consuming the food product that you bought, but you're consuming the plastic container that it came in. You're consuming the energy it took to make that plastic container. You're consuming the, you know, the staffing that it took, you know, everything that happened, you know, again, before we get to, a lot of stuff happens, and each level of processing, something else happens. And so how do we cut that down and cut that to me, actually, that's a big thing that I'm thinking about is just that packaging and cutting down on that packaging and on that plastic. I think plastics are just, I think everyone, I think we're hearing more and more about it. Okay, let's use less plastic, use less of, basically everything we can, because it's important for us all to, consume less is,
Right.
my opinion. I mean, that's just my opinion, but, and one way that I do it is, again, is just buying whole food. I mean, not buying processed food, but, if you say, well, I need, there's some, and it doesn't have to be all the time, and no one has to beat themselves up over every little tiny thing.
Oh, right. It'll drive you crazy.
But think about it, be aware and pay attention. Oh, you know what? When I do eat this, this is what happens, and this is what, this is how it came to me. Again, just having an awareness and paying attention, and hopefully, so I hope that myself, I'm continuing to evolve within that space of, okay, what can I do? How can I be better at this? How can I consume less and feed myself well? And how do I feel good when I eat? And what do I, just everything within that realm of, feeding ourselves and taking care of ourselves and, being good to ourselves, and also, the world around us, and to the people that, made our food, have that sense of awareness and respect of, oh, wow, someone grew this, and someone farmed this, and someone slaughtered this, and someone, all this stuff happened. And
Right.
And people need, we need food, and some people are hungry, yet within all this food that we have in abundance, you have people that are still hungry or that don't get enough food. And so, that's a big thing that's always weighing in the back of chefs' minds in particular, is that, wow, not everyone is eating,
Mm-hmm.
Again, we can't all fix everything all the time. So it's really just a matter of, okay, how can I do my best, and what can I do?
Right. And it sounds like, I mean, you have been, with, what you were doing at St. Mark's, and then progressing, you are doing more, so that's amazing work. I mean, it's just,
it's just those.
We appreciate what you're doing. So thank you for that, and putting that work in, and being, aware of the need for it, and doing that is, that's, I think, as more people are doing that kind of stuff and taking that up, it just lifts everybody else up.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what it does. It takes just, again, not everyone being this perfect example of everything all the time. It just, everyone kind of doing their part and saying, oh, what's happening here and what's happening there. And, I can not put my produce in a plastic bag or whatever. It's like,
right.
I can all do it to some extent,
Yeah. Sorry, I just got a notification. I didn't know if that was us. I think we're still good. What in terms of what about in terms of the culinary side of things? Like where would you like to see, or maybe what are you progressing toward, or would you like to see kind of in terms of cooking style of food, flavors? Is there something like that you're connecting with or envisioning?
Well, I think, I hope that, for myself, I've always been along this line of, I really do like whole food. I was a raw food chef. I love the true flavor of food, and that's kind of what I try to discover. If, whatever I'm cooking, I try to, figure out what's this true flavor, what's the true expression of this food. Mm. And I think that, I'd like to keep going along that path, but I think that socially and culinarily, I think we're coming along that path too, where having that greater appreciation of vegetables and fruit-based cuisines, fruit and vegetable as a base within our cuisine, rather than bigger pieces of meat or, using meat as a complement. I think that's kind of a trend that started happening a long time ago, and now it's really starting to come into its own. Again, you can be a vegetarian and get a job at a restaurant. It's a good restaurant.
Right. Or even that there are restaurants with vegetarian and vegan options on the menu, you know, that's feels
Yeah, it's not
relatively
just an
new.
afterthought.
Yeah.
You know, oh, this is actually good. Although I just read an article, which was funny, that vegetarians are mad at vegans because now that vegetarian item on the menu no longer has dairy or eggs in it, because now the chefs have made it vegan so that it encompasses everyone, and the vegetarians are like, but I like cheese.
Yeah, I want my cheese.
But I want my cheese. So, you know, it's hard to please everyone, but I do think that we're, as a society, moving in the direction of, you know, more plant-based, and you know, which again I think comes from having that appreciation of where those products come from, and you know, if you, when you're consuming, think about it and be aware of it, and you know.
I think a lot of it feels cultural too, like, you know, kind of the generic American idea is we go to the meat counter and there's just these divided up pieces of meat, and so we're not thinking about that whole chain. But I know that, like, in a lot of other cultures, not even necessarily in other countries, but in other cultures within America, there's a different relationship, because you're maybe going to the fruit stand or vegetable stand every day. You're not going to the supermarket for it. You're going to the smaller markets. And like you were saying, around us, we have access to the farmer's market or farm stands, where it's a little bit more of an everyday kind of thing, and you really are kind of paying attention. And you were talking about your Lebanese aunt in Los Angeles, where we used to live. There was an amazing Lebanese restaurant, a little tiny place where we would go. I'm getting a message that we're starting to run out of time. But we're sitting at the counter at this place, and you know, the music is going and everyone's eating their food, and they're cooking right on the other side of the counter. And my wife and I are sitting at the counter, and we're eating our lunch, and they were prepping for I think a wedding that they were catering, and there was just on the other side of the counter was a lamb, and the chef was cutting the silver skin off of it, like
right.
you know, a foot away from us and our plates. And it was like, that's just where we are. That's just what we're doing. And it was like, it wasn't a problem. It was just like, okay, we're just in this space. But it was like, you're very aware of the chain of that lamb, you know, and where it's headed and where it came from. So I think there is a lot of that awareness. I think will bring, you know, more of that appreciation. And like you're talking about, like maybe the proportions change in terms of what we're paying attention to and stuff like that.
Yeah. You know, we're very lucky. We have abundant food, but we do still have people who need food in this country, and but we can go to the, you know, market every day, and which again, not everyone even in the United States can do that. We're lucky to be in California.
Yeah.
It's you know, I have a fun job. I have a, you know, great connection with the food that I eat. And I always hope that people, you know, learn that if they don't have it, that they find it, and you know, because it's how we live. We eat and drink and, you know, have shelter from bad weather. It's, you know, we stay alive.
The basic. Yeah. Well, we have reached our time. I really appreciate you hanging out. We could probably talk for another 2 hours on this. And I would love to, maybe another time, or maybe in person sometime. And we would love to get your other cookbook at the library. And
I'll bring it in.
Oh yeah, that'd be great to have it there. And everybody who's watching, look out for the cookbooks at the library. And this has been Chef Stephanie Valentine at the Solvang Library Sweet and Savory Cooking Club. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Naisha, for being with us today. And thank you all watching this and watching it later. And we will see you all at the library, and we will see Chef Valentine around the valley.
Yep, you'll always see me at one of the grocery stores or the farmer's market. So.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you so much. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll see you later. Bye, everyone.